folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Retail Perch. I know we took a week off last week, but we're back with a bang with some amazing guests lined up here for the next few weeks. And of course, I have my now favorite co-host, Gary Hawkins, who has effectively replaced Stephanie again at the top of the perch. But I'm sure Stephanie will be back one of these days. But Gary, how are you?
Great, Shekar. Thank you. Great to be with you again today.
Yes. And the weather is finally perking up, right? The snow is gone, the spring is setting in here, and today actually we have an amazing guest. I mean, we've spoken to retailers, we've spoken to some startups, but I think it's the first time today that we have a guest from the industry, from an association in the industry, who's got a really keen insights about what's happening in retail. And I'm sure you guys are going to absolutely enjoy the conversation today. So without any further ado, I want to welcome Doug here to our podcast. Doug, it's so great to have you here. And why don't you take a few minutes, introduce yourself, tell us where you come from, what you do at FMI, and whatever else you want to add. So here's Doug.
Sure. So first, thanks for having me, Shekar and Gary. This is awesome. I love doing these, and just sort of getting around the table and having a conversation. I had the pleasure of having a long career in the industry before coming to FMI. Started with division of Kroger in store operations, spent several years with them, and then went off into manufacturing with Nabisco prior to Kraft owning them, but did work with them during that acquisition. And then went a completely different route. I joined up with Albertsons and went into private brands, and then found myself moving across the country slowly as I worked with a sales and marketing agency supporting other retailers with their private brand programs. So I started in Ohio, went to Arizona, and I've made my all the way back to Washington, D.C. by way of Texas. And been with FMI now for 7 years. It's a real pleasure. I would, for me, this is sort of like the pinnacle of my career. And after 32 years in industry, it was great to be able to come to FMI and now have an opportunity to give back. The way I look at FMI is it's an opportunity to advocate and educate and create platforms for collaboration and give back to the industry that gave so much to me and my family as we were all growing up together. So for FMI, I have the pleasure of facilitating several councils. One area of practice is private brands. I also have the opportunity to lead our FMI tech platform, which is anything related to technology and how that crosses the entire store and entire supply chain. And that's really sort of what introduced me to Gary, and by way of Gary through to you, Shekar, is technology. So that's a growing practice inside of FMI. I mean, as quickly as technology is growing, we find that we're constantly evolving the way we support the industry inside of FMI. And then I also have the opportunity to have oversight of asset protection and crisis for FMI in the industry. So, this past year has been busy. It's been crisis du jour, all while being under the compression of the pandemic, because none of the other natural disasters or human-made disasters have ever subsided just because the pandemic was here. We just had to learn how to deal with them while we were in the pandemic. So it's been great. I get to do something. It feels like with FMI, I get to do something new every day, and I get to meet new people every day, like yourselves, and I get to have a new conversation every day. So I couldn't have asked for a better way to round out my career.
Oh, that's terrific. So Doug, sort of jumping right in here, one of the roles you have with FMI is heading the CIO Council. And I have to imagine that gives you some pretty unique insight into what retailers are thinking about, some of their challenges they're having with regard to technology and things that are moving so fast here in this world. Any thoughts you could share with us around what your understanding is of some of those key challenges retailers are focused on right now?
Yeah, it's finding time to do everything they need to do, right? There is a horizontal list of priorities, and it just depends on which one's rising above or falling below. within the council, which we're actually reorganizing the council right now, and we're going to be opening it up to other companies to participate. So we actually created a structure that I think is pretty exciting, and it's going to be led by an industry leadership council. And then the executive committee is going to be the old CIO council, where retailers and wholesalers meet. But we want to start bringing other companies into the fold to have these conversations. And every single year, we sort of look at our priorities as a group and what are the things that retailers are really focused on, and created a cool chart. So I might glance up every now and then because there's so much on it, you know. And truthfully, I was sort of joking. I was half kidding early. It's finding the time and money to do all of the things that they need to do. But there's really 4 buckets that we've sort of organized the priorities for the industry's technology. And it's shopper experience, operational efficiencies, supply chain, and data analytics. And then within that, you tick into those various topics around frictionless checkout, in-store activation like ESLs and digital signs. Of course, online shopping, right? E-commerce as a result of the pandemic. That's one of those things that might have been an important activity, but it became an essential activity as a result of the pandemic. And then workforce, you know, I mean, for various reasons, it's how do we retrain our workforce in order to be able to live within a society of technology-driven activities. And then also thinking about the fact that within the pandemic, we were dealing with an enemy that was actually trying to take away your workforce. So what are those things we need to think about moving forward if we ever have to deal with this again? What are the automated type activities that we can do that can support human labor so that we don't find ourselves in a similar situation? You know, and then under data analytics, we now have a discussion group. It's a data and analytics discussion group. And retailers, you know, there's no shortage of data. It's the opportunity, the time to be able to glean the insights out of the data. And, you know, as more and more companies and individuals inside of these that are trying to take advantage of this data, it's how do you support the information technology team that are getting these ad hoc requests on a daily basis, and typically from multiple people, right? So the discussion group right now is saying, you know, we need to develop a platform that is governed and secure so that anybody inside of our organization can access some readily and reusable type reports so that they don't all become ad hoc. Only the special ones are ad hoc. And so how do they create that portal that allows employees throughout the organization to interact with the data that they're collecting? And then on a adjacent to that is how do we make that data more accessible to our trading partners in order to be able to improve demand planning, forecasting, you know, OSA, and et cetera. So there's a lot of things that they're trying to work on, attempting not to boil the ocean, but some days you feel like you have to.
No, that's amazing. I mean, this is obviously, you know, big problems, right? And, you know, require, you know, out of the box thinking and really innovative thinking. So from the perspective of, you know, these discussion groups that happen, what's the approach to the solution? Is it a lot of them are in terms of build, buy, partnership? What is it that retailers really look out for, and where do you feel that they really need help?
Yeah, the answer to that, Shekar, is yes. Right? They're buying, they're building, they're partnering. It really, I think long term, majority of the companies that are in this discussion group would love to be able to build something internally, supported by third parties. You know, there's certain platforms that they're going to need to buy into. There's certain cloud data access that they're going to have to buy into, but they want to be able to customize it to the much of they possibly can. Here's the challenge: is that it's a significant expense to build a data and analytics team, right? To be able to harness the data, glean the insights, and then provide it back out. So in some instances, they're having to find quick wins, and they can find those quick wins working with a third party to deliver and show the operators what is possible. So while they're building the platform on this side, they're delivering quick wins along the way on this side to keep the leaders engaged and keep it on as a budget item, right? I mean, again, retailers are, they live on a very small margin, 1 penny to 3 pennies on every dollar if you're really successful, and you got to really be judicious in how you're spending that money. So from this aspect, they really need to deliver real-time wins as they're building this. Really, it's an organization inside of an organization.
Right. So it's really, they have to trade off between tactical solutions and strategic solutions, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. And a heavy focus on governance.
Right.
Many of them are still trying to figure that out. How do we govern this information that we've got? We also have unfortunately, we're starting to see a patchquilt of privacy laws coming into play across the country. And how does that, affect the information that's being utilized to glean these insights?
Yeah, and I'm assuming, Doug, when we talk about data like this, it's both, product data as well as customer data, right? And how those things come together. And I think the other dimension that's challenging everyone here is data is moving faster and faster, right? We're all living in a real-time world today, and the need for almost real-time insights.
Yeah, well, yeah, and moving from in-store loyalty card to online, you actually even open up more data that is gleanable off of the consumer, right? So it was coming in like in a fire hose beforehand, now it's like somebody opened up the dam.
Right.
And it's being able to process and get those insights out of that and get them back out. Obviously it's to really do the one thing that everybody wants to do, and that is meet the customer demand.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that, we've always noticed, and it was funny because I don't have a background in retail. I'm an engineer. I worked in, several industries, including Wall Street, and jumped into retail. So no background in retail whatsoever, unlike Gary. And so the first thing I noticed when we started Birdzi was the lack of standards and actual data, right, that retailers carry. And a lot of the new services, the cutting edge services, the machine learning, the AI, they're all dependent on good quality data, right? And so how do retailers approach that problem, when they're trying to put their heads together? What's some of the solutions that you've seen to addressing that? Because that seems very foundational. If you don't have good data to start with, then it doesn't really matter what you have after that. Yeah. It's really difficult to do anything.
And the unfortunate thing with that is that it's something we've been dealing with for 20, 30 years, right? I mean, just foundational data between business partners, trading partners has been a challenge. And now you have all this additional data that is consumer facing that, that are consumers are demanding. And we found a way to get an end around with the B2B data, right? We found a way to get the product into the store, get it on the shelf, get the vendor paid for, and processes were put into place to deal with bad data. Consumers aren't going to give us that kind of flexibility, right? I mean, it's digital must equal physical. And so there has been a lot of work going on. And I would say probably the one thing that really drove most brand owners, and I'm going to put retailers and, they're all brand owners. Retailers have private brands, but Smart Label was really sort of a catalyst for needing to clean up your data, especially your consumer facing data. Because basically what you're telling the consumer that clicks on a Smart Label QR code is that here it is. I'm giving you everything, right? I'm pulling the veil back and I'm sharing with you more than you could ever access on a package. And so the brand is responsible for that data. Smart Label isn't a big database in the sky.
Right.
It's either brand owned data or it's being housed in a third party, but it's automatically being updated by that brand. And so the one thing that we learned pretty quickly is that not only does the data need to be cleaned up, it needs to be centralized. You go inside of a retailer, marketing has data, procurement has data, right? Supply chain has data. It's everywhere. And so it's making sure that those MDMs are now in a centralized location that are speaking clearly to each other, right? In a lot of instances, they were siloed and not interdependent. But you got to get that connectivity back together, and that's a project that's still going on today. I know our partnership with GS1. They have the Retail Grocery Initiative Executive Leadership Council, and they've been working on various data quality projects, and it's actually going all the way back to the very beginning.
Right.
The 7 foundational attributes. Does your product even have a GTIN that is really yours and is not owned by somebody else? And is it in the GDSN, right? So it's really sort of starting from square one, but every time we do that, we make a leap forward and we make another leap forward. But it's those foundational platforms like Smart Label and other things that consumers are using to learn more about products they consume that are going to continue to drive this need for good, clean, quality data.
Yeah, we certainly are seeing, more and more retailers putting, CDPs in place to manage, bring together all their customer data in one place, PIMs to, do the same thing on the product side, bring all that data together and have one source of truth, one repository for it. But, there's a lot of work to do on both sides. And that's just really putting the foundation pieces in place. That's not, okay, now that I have this data, what do I do with it, right?
And then you got to create the whole set of BI tools to actually make it come to life.
Well,
Right.
And I think, what's happening there is, again, something really interesting. As human beings, we can't think of a million different things at once. We tend to group and categorize things, right? Think of product category management, right? In the store. And we do the same thing when we think of customers, right? Whatever you want to call the groups, gold, silver, bronze, whatever, we tend to categorize them. And yet new technologies and tools like AI and machine learning are opening the door to literally being able to function and manage at the individual customer level across thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of shoppers all at the same time. And, I think that just adds a lot more complexity to this whole puzzle.
It does, but the thing I do like about it, it's similar to what you said earlier, Shekar. You don't come from this industry, and we need people and tools that don't look at the industry through the same lens that Gary and I look through it, right? I would say Gary is definitely sort of like one of those push, lean forward type of individuals, but I was a retailer. I don't want to do anybody injustice, but I tell everybody I was a can stacker, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was in the stores. I was stacking boxes and stocking cans, and to really, and it was something you just did every day, and it was always with the consumer in mind. So to now have to open up your view and say, you know what, the way we were doing maybe isn't the right way, and we put so much pride in the way we were doing it. To say that we might need to throw the baby out with the bathwater and look at this in a completely different set of eyes. It's these types of discussions, it's those types of tools that AI technology brings to the play without any emotion whatsoever. And it's individuals like yourself, Shekar, that come from other industries and say, why are you doing it like this?
Right. I mean, such a simple problem, right? Product categorization that Gary talked about. You go to retailers and you look at their item file, their category file. They're all different, right? There doesn't seem to be a standard category. Yes, you have the Nielsen's who have their categorizations and stuff like that. But typically, what I've seen happen is that a retailer will get the Nielsen categories, and then it'll slowly diverge over time, right? Because somebody hasn't done the due diligence of categorizing new products that are coming in and products that have been going out. So you wind up with this, everybody's got their own little variation of product categories, and it becomes very difficult when you're trying to build solutions that are trying to normalize this data, right? Those are all challenges, and I know that GS1 is kind of trying to tackle some of these things, and it's not an easy thing to do. And I think they've tried to put together kind of a data repository that you can subscribe to, and a manufacturer can go and update all of that stuff. And I know it's one of those, can you catch a wave, poop on the sand? It's like, it's very slippery, right? So are there discussions around that at FMI in terms of how can retailers work together, cooperate, and brands actually to standardize some of this stuff?
Yeah, so we were talking about this on a panel that I led yesterday with supply chain professionals, and the pandemic really, we talk about things like transformational change activities or events. The pandemic was one of those events that is causing transformational change in this industry. And a lot of it was simply because I needed to take care of my customer that day. Right? I have to find a way to get around this obstacle. The one thing I think, is really hard as a former retailer is everything we do, we try to create a competitive advantage out of it. So to your point about, category classifications, that was a head scratcher. When I was a retailer, it didn't bother me as much because I had a partner and I used that partner in their category classifications. When you're in the industry and you're looking outside in, and you're not actually working with one of those partners, you're going, well, wait a minute, isn't there a more efficient way to do this? Well, right. It's my competitive advantage to do it this way. So we try to turn everything into a competitive advantage. Right. And I think, through this pandemic, we've found out that there are some things that although we compete, we can cooperate. The famous term coopetition, whether it's being sharing assets, sharing data, so I think we're starting to unlock that. And PepsiCo had a really good example of how they were working with retailers early on in the pandemic, when they were calling them up and saying, hey, we need to have a better understanding, or we need more inventory on this, or we're gonna need your help here. And PepsiCo was like, wait a minute, time out. Here's the information we've got. If there's more information that you can provide to me to help me make a better decision on your behalf, then let's do that. And so I'm sure they weren't the first, but they've been talking about it as a best in class moving forward, is the sharing of data between trading partners. And if you're going to start doing that, you need to start having some consistent standards so that you maintain interoperability. Right? You can't hand it to a one trading partner and they're getting it from all of their other trading partners, retailers, wholesalers, whoever they are, and it looks differently.
Right.
It's got to come in, it's got to be consistent, it's got to be usable. And again, we can do workarounds, but why? Why create more work? Let's get some standards. And back to the whole conversation around standards, when you were talking about it, what it made me think of is a lot of times some of this new stuff is moving so fast that somebody's trying to get first mover rights. Right. And so we have a tendency to forget that where will we be 3-5 years from now, and how many more players will be in the game, and what ultimately will the industry benefit? How ultimately will the consumer benefit if the industry starts thinking about this more holistically? Voice as an example, okay, so Amazon, Google, Siri, they're all leading the way, but how do retailers now start engaging in that with the anxiety of being on a proprietary platform and having their customer data go through a proprietary platform, versus an open voice platform that has standards and interoperability governances that allows the retailer to feel comfortable that while I'm engaging with my customer, the data that's being shared is my data and it's not right. being viewed or used anywhere else.
Sure. Yeah, obviously, we talked about some of these challenges that retailers are facing, but I think also the pandemic has resulted in maybe even new business models coming to the fore, right? So new ways of actually providing groceries to people, and taking advantage of some of these newer technologies. So I know, Gary, we've talked a little bit about some of these new technologies, like is it GoPuff and Fridge No More? And so what do you see from by way of disruption that you think retailers need to be aware of, and interesting technologies that your business models that you've seen coming to the market?
for what we've been seeing is they're dealing with the most pressing issues at the most pressing moment right now. So whatever technologies are helping retailers with frictionless checkout, right? Those are really important technologies. Anything that's helping them with e-commerce and fulfilling the last mile of e-commerce more profitably. Although we saw a 14% decline in February in online sales, and we haven't seen March yet, but are we going to start seeing a trend? It's still a significant increase over what we had. So we can't anticipate that we're going to go back to the way it was. And it wasn't very profitable beforehand. So what are those technologies that we need to put in place in order to become profitable with e-commerce? And then the third one that I would say is any technologies that help me automate some of the mundane, high labor intensive type activities. And there's a lot of conversation about robots going down the aisle versus a camera, that's fixed on the shelf to look at out of stocks. And that debate goes back and forth. They're all helpful. Everybody wants to know who's going to have the longevity. And I think the market will play itself out, but then, other areas of automation, think about manufacturing, and what we've had to go through as a result of the pandemic. What types of automation type technology can we put into place? Even to sort of reduce the amount of labor, not just get rid of it altogether, but reduce the amount of dependency on human labor, so that those humans can do other activities. So for what I've been seeing, it's those technologies in business models. The one business model that I think is just fascinating that we haven't quite figured out in this country is backhaul. And if you look over in Europe, competitors are sharing equipment, right? Nobody wants an empty truck on the road. And so we've had the conversation, but we just have never been able to get to the point where trading partners are doing it. Okay, so retailers might have a relationship with a manufacturer, but extending that out to where one retailer is backhauling for another retailer, it's being able to get past that mindset that my truck might show up on my competitor's lot, right? Well, in Europe, they're doing it, and they've been doing it for 10 years. And so from a sustainability standpoint alone, there's enough of a use case to say yes. Empty trucks on the road burning fuel is not very sustainable. And from a labor standpoint, we have a shortage in trucking. And so this is a way to address that. So that business model, in my opinion, I think I would love to see continue to excel. And I think we will get there in this country, especially because labor is going to continue to become a problem. Somebody, I was on a session the other day where the speaker said by 2035, there will be more over 65-year-olds than under 18-year-olds in our country. Our country population will look more like Europe's than it will look like our own. And that's been somewhat of a precedent as to why Europe's had to do some of the automation activities and model sharing activities that we haven't, because our workforce age has been plentiful, but that's going to change by 2035.
There's change everywhere.
For sure.
So, I think one of the things that you touched upon that really got me thinking is about this change in mindset that has to happen, right? And, when you talk about change in mindset, is also, traditionally retailers have had certain organizational structure in terms of, people that they've hired, had their team. And now with these, things about e-commerce becoming a focus, more technology becoming a focus, I'm sure more retailers are thinking about how do I build a technology team internally, right? An analytics team internally. What do you think they're doing in terms of attracting the necessary talent? Because one of the things that might happen is that somebody who's gone to school, done computer science and done some AI is not looking to go work at a grocery store, a grocery company, right? They're thinking about going to Silicon Valley, some hi-fi startup, something like that. So what do you think retailers are doing in terms of attracting talent? Because that's critical if you want to build these technologies, right?
And that, Shekar, is a whole session in itself.
Right.
Prior to, and Gary's had the opportunity to experience it, the retailers that were really putting a stake in the ground were actually trying to create campuses that that mimicked Google and Amazon and others, right? If I'm going to bring somebody from a major metropolitan area to a middle town America, I need to at least provide them a working environment that, that they're more conducive to understanding the demographic that they're in. And I hate to keep going back to the pandemic, but it's changed so much, as Gary said. It's now even more difficult for retailers. And it's also easier for retailers to poach against each other. I don't have to go into the office anymore, right? I can work from home. So on one hand, it allows you a larger pool to compete in. So if I'm in small town America, I can recruit from Seattle because I don't necessarily need the person come into the office, but they still demand more in a salary because of where they live. And because everybody else is recruiting them from that same pool, those who have the capital win. So, I think that whole thing needs to shake out as well. And there's a popular opinion that in some instances, we need them to be geographically located, maybe not near the office, but close enough that they can get to the office. So if we're starting a sprint team, we can bring everybody together, get the project underway. And then when you go home and start doing your coding, you can do that from your own place and then bring everybody back. So there's like this hybrid model that seems to be playing out. So I think we'll start seeing larger pools of regional recruitment. And for the really big companies that are, they'll identify positions that it doesn't matter where you live at in the country or the world, and you'll be able to sit there. So I wish I had a better answer. And I thought I would have, not even just 2 weeks ago, since my last CIO Technology Council meeting. We spent half the meeting talking about this. And since that conversation, I'm going, holy crap, now we have a new dynamic we need to figure out.
Because so much of the technology that most retailers I see have is so operationally focused and not innovation focused, right? It's about, how do I make sure my POS is running and my supply chain, my ordering is happening and the deals are coming in, and it's about pricing. And so little is actually customer facing innovation technology, right? And I think, and that's where the e-commerce companies, some people who are purely digital natives, right? Pure e-commerce companies are winning out because they're digital first. So they've kind of grown up in that space of handling data and in dealing with all of this stuff, that some of the brick and mortar companies are struggling to kind of catch up in that area, it seems like.
Yeah, somebody said one time, is it easier for brick and mortar to morph into technology, or is it easier for technology to sell stuff? Right. And so I think that's the big thing. When you put a technology company together and they start selling stuff, they don't carry the same kind of institutional knowledge, maybe baggage that a retailer does. That's because here's the other thing too. Brick and mortar is still their most valuable asset. Right. E-commerce, although growing, is still a smaller percentage of their total volume than in store.
And not as profitable.
and not as profitable on top of that. So it's also trying to figure out what types of technologies you use to delight the consumer while they're in your store, at the same time making their shopping trip efficient. So how will my handheld device make my shopping trip less frictionless? And, we're starting to see that again, go outside of our industry. And I think of Home Depot as being a really good example. If I need to find something in a Home Depot, and as much as I love wandering the aisles, my wife really would prefer me to get in and get out. I go into the app and I put in what it is I want, and it tells me what aisle and what bay, right? So more retailers that are starting to look at it that way will help reduce that trip time in the store. And then you also got to go back to voice. In 3 to 5 years, your handheld is going to be your personal avatar. And so this conversation will be back and forth, and how do retailers ensure that their data is accurate enough? How do we ensure that the standards are interoperable? I say soda, you say pop, Gary says Coke. They all mean the same thing. But the computer doesn't know that. The AI doesn't understand that. So we've got to build that language dictionary in order for that customer to interact. So those in-store technologies, in my opinion, are probably even more important. But again, pure play, I don't have to worry about that.
Right.
I'm a technology company that is going to sell stuff, and it just happens to be food.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And look what's happening with some of these companies that are digital native. They don't, and they're not operating stores, and yet they've got massive valuations, right? That are exceeding a lot of traditional retailers that have stores that have traditionally been their key assets. Now the asset is either a business model focused around fulfillment, delivery time, and I think an increasing component of that is customer intelligence, right? You look at all these companies that are more pure play, they are digitally engaged with every single one of their shoppers. They know names, addresses, emails, phone numbers, what they're buying, how much they're paying for it, where they're getting it from. That data is becoming a massively valued asset for these companies.
Right. A big asset. And for brick and mortar retailers too. Here's some of the difference is does the digitally native retailer, do they use it to drive their business? And do they use it to make their trading partners better for them? And then you have the other side of this is some of them use the data to drive their business, and they're happy to give it to their trading partner, but there's going to be a little bit something in it,
Yeah.
which creates a point of friction, right? If ultimately I need to give you every tool and resource that you need in order to make me more successful, then that value alone should be enough. And so
Right.
again, it's a culture shift, and I think we'll get there. It's just, as Gary and I both know, having long time careers in this industry, we take a little bit longer to get to that next step. We're moving a lot more quickly than we ever have out of necessity,
Yeah.
but we're still not moving at the pace of some other industries.
Right.
No, that's right. But I think we're also seeing a shift in how value is actually created, right?
Mhm.
It is no longer necessarily tied to that physical store. Ultimately, yes, it's getting that product from point of manufacture to that consumer, but there's a lot of different ways that can happen. But in the digital world, you look at companies like a Facebook, Google, so many others that have grown exponentially. It's because of the digital networks they've created, and these digital native players have got that network almost by default, right? Traditional retailers, I think, have the opportunity, but their challenge is, how do I take my customer base of 1 million or 5 million or 20 million customers and digitally engage with them on a regular basis, so I also have a digital network that I can then take out into all these other directions to create value.
Yeah, and I also know of a retailer who I was having this conversation with, and they said, and the comment that was made is that every time I teach somebody how to shop online, I teach them how not to shop in my store. And so, there's, how do you have that digital relationship? Really, it's the exchange of information, right?
Yeah,
right.
Information becomes the power.
Right.
That's something else that we've talked about as it relates to data and product attributes. One of the things that was highlighted that we still have a long ways to go is that a consumer that gets online, whether it be on social media or on an e-commerce site, they're interested in something. They're interested in information. So whoever does a better job of expressing that information is going to be the winner. And so retailers need to understand they either can lead the narrative or they can be led by the narrative. And that goes in multiple aspects of their business. But as it relates to awareness and shopping and health and stuff like that, the retailer has an opportunity to lead that, but it comes back to foundational data. How do you search for products? How do I, I'm not a huge fan of shopping online. I don't have all day to scroll from page to page to page to page to page. And if I'm a first timer online, that's intimidating to me.
Right.
And it's a turnoff. So the only thing we have is the search button. And if we haven't improved the search button, then the information that I'm looking for isn't being given to me. So whoever's sharing the information with the least amount of friction, again, becomes the winner.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Because I think a lot of people, certainly a lot of retailers, don't understand the nuances, the differences between data and information and, ultimately intelligence.
Yeah. My God, Gary, we've been talking for 40 minutes already. I can't believe it. It seems like we just got started here.
Well, Doug's a fascinating guy to talk to.
Yeah. So what it tells me is that we need another session with Doug, number one, because we can't possibly complete this in any reasonable time. But I just want to kind of, in a closing thought, just to mention a couple of things. I mean, I think you started off by saying the 4 areas that you feel retailers are really focused on is shopper experience, operational efficiency, supply chain, and data and analytics, right? How much do you think the pandemic has impacted in terms of pushing the timeline forward in terms of advancing some of these things?
Oh, exponentially. I was having a conversation with a retailer, and cash flow is pretty strong in the industry. It doesn't mean they're more profitable. They just have more cash flowing, right? And so now a lot of retailers are saying, not only do we need to do this, but it's something we've always wanted to do. So we need to get on it now while we have the cash flow to do it. And so that's the one thing that a lot of information technology professionals are dealing with right now, is prioritizing those activities. Also, how can I bolster my team? Understanding it might not be a long-term activity. It might be a 2-year, 3-year term, but how do I bolster my team to have somebody come in and help me sort of identify what are those issues, then help me identify. And I know Gary's outfit does a really good job with this, and look forward to working with them, but identify who's really good at doing these things, but then taking it all the way through implementation, right? So a lot of times we do really good at helping identify. We do really good at helping identify who are the service providers we should be working with. But then we, as maybe industry consultants, we walk away in a lot of instances, and we allow the implementation to happen. Well, that's still a labor resource inside that retailer. Somebody's got to lead it for the retailer. And if you have a smaller team, and you need to expand that for a period of time, how do I do that effectively so I can get these projects into the pipeline and then executed and move on to the next one without hiring 10 people that I know I won't be able to keep after 3 years?
Right. Wow, this has been a fascinating conversation. Gary, anything else?
No, this has been great. And yeah, I think it would be terrific if we could get Doug to come back and do another session with us.
Yeah, and I think, Doug, if we can get you back in a couple of months and we have pretty much the first half of the year done here, I think we'll start seeing what are the lasting impacts of the pandemic in terms of changes in behavior, both from a retail organization and go-to-market perspective, as well as a consumer perspective, right? Because obviously one impacts the other. I think it's going to be, I'm really excited about this year from a change perspective, because I think we're going to see a lot of things change right in front of our eyes. And 2020 was the year that never was in some sense, but 2021 is going to be back from a transformational perspective. I think we'll look back at this year and say that was the year that so many things changed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
for sure, I'm happy to join you guys whenever you're willing to have me. I will put a disclaimer, and this is one that my wife shares. I'm often wrong, but never in doubt.
That's good, and that's one thing they do say about entrepreneurs. They're never sure about what they're doing, but they always do it confidently.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So listen, Doug, it's been fantastic. By the way, you for being on our show, you are going to get a gift. You're going to get the Retail Perch coffee mug.
You too will have a.
That's right. Yeah. You probably want to put it. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Collector's item.
Awesome.
That's right. Yeah. So all we'll need, if you could just drop us an email with your address that we can mail it to, we'll make sure we get it to you. And next time we get you on the show, we can share a cup of coffee in the same mug. So that'd be great. So
that would be awesome. I will sit proudly on my desk for my wife and dog to enjoy until I get back to my office.
There you go. Yeah. Well, it's been great having Doug on the show, folks. if you have any guests that you think we should get on the show, email us at the retailperch@birdseye.com. Of course, we now have our own website. You can reach us on Instagram, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and all these wonderful places. And listen, if you got a question for Doug and you want him to address it next time, send us an email as well. We're happy to entertain all of that. And I have some bit of good news for you, Gary, in terms of how our little podcast is doing. I think this is episode number 27. So we've been at it a little more than a half a year. And we're actually number 4 in a list of top grocery podcasts. So, that's pretty good. And I think with Doug being on the show this week, I think we're going to jump up a couple more notches.
We're going to climb even further.
Yeah, because I think there's two things. I think number one, Doug's experience, and then his insights into looking at the industry, both being inside and being outside, and now working with retailers and coming up with solutions. I think that's a very unique perspective, and I think our listeners are absolutely going to love it. So, Doug, thank you so much. You want to say anything before we close out here?
Well, I hope I don't fall off that pedestal that you guys just put me on. I enjoy the conversation. I love this industry, and I couldn't be more prouder of this industry and what we've done over the last 12 months. So thank you for you guys giving people a platform to have discussions about it.
Terrific. Again, thank you, folks. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you guys tuning in on a weekly basis and being part of this podcast, and the support that you guys have given us has been amazing. But we'll see you again next week. Till then, be safe, and I hope you get your vaccinations and you're ready to go live life again. Gary, anything before we close out?
No, another great discussion, and we'll look forward to the next one.
Awesome. Bye, folks.
All right. Thank you.
Make sure to join us every Monday and connect with us at the Retail Perch on Instagram and Facebook.
And if you have any questions, feel free to email us at theretailperch@birdseye.com.
Until next time, this is Shekar.
And this is Gary, signing off.